the address of the emergency? 911.
I need help. My husband.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
I need help. I need help. My husband was shot. I need help.
Okay, where are you at, ma'am?
I'm at Colfax Avenue.
Colfax?
Yes, please.
Is this a house and apartment?
What is the house?
Okay, and tell me exactly what happened.
I know my husband bought us some food and he left out and me and my son were eating and I just heard gunshots and I put myself in the room and I came outside and my husband was on the ground.
Okay, stay on the line with me here, okay? Okay, ma'am. Where's your husband's outside? Okay, stay on the line with me. Ma'am, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath from me, okay? How many shots did you hear, ma'am? Ma'am? Hello?
I don't know. I just want to lie.
So, New Year's Eve, 2018, 911 call comes in just after 11 o'clock at night. Shots fired. And when you get a shots fired 911 call like that, in our community, it's an all hands on deck type response. It's a massive response by law enforcement.
Variance 1813.
1813, go ahead.
You can show me on scene.
Number 13, I don't have yours. What's your ID?
Hey, Sarge, can you get some tape and secure this for me? Yep.
Okay.
On scene, immediately you see the victim slumped down, leaning up against a full-size pickup truck. Very, very evident of serious injuries, multiple gunshot wounds, profuse bleeding. The victim was still breathing at the time, kind of agonal breathing. It was a very bloody, gruesome scene.
Let me know when we got to get him on there, guys. Yep. Man, we're going to have to get him on this cot, okay?
Go ahead.
I know. Well, let me get in there, ma'am, okay? Let us get in there, hon, okay? Let us get in there.
That way.
You ready?
I'm gonna follow him with the sheet. So we can get the sheet on there. There you go. I think that's perfect.
Get these people back.
Pull that sheet.
It was a very agitated scene. The 911 caller, Hassel, the wife of the victim, was still on scene, hugging her husband, crying, very, very emotional at the time, in a very, very excited state about what just happened.
Hey, guys.
We need to secure
Yeah. Hey, bud. I know this is messed up. We got to get you guys out of here so we can secure this scene, okay? We got to collect some evidence and find out what the hell's going on here, okay?
Come on here with us.
Come on out here with us. I know, man. We got it, but we got to get you out here a second, okay? We'll talk to you in a minute. Do you live here, bud?
I live here.
Okay.
Word spreads quickly in a pretty small community, so family members, neighbors, they were all on scene within minutes.
My grandson is probably in there by himself.
Okay, we'll go. I'll go take care of that for you if he is.
He's
we'll get
one.
You in. Okay, we'll get you in there, okay?
Okay.
All right.
There was a small child was in that residence. It is chaotic. It's very emotional. We ended up doing a search for the child. We really need to make sure this person wasn't harmed in any way.
Yeah, let's go. Where'd the lady go here? Let's go clear this house real quick. There might be a baby.
The baby's right here.
They're shell casings, guys. Just be careful. Okay, buddy. Okay, come here, buddy. I won't hurt you. Okay, I'm gonna take you to Daddy. Come on. I got you, bud. Come on. Okay. Shut up.
We found the child. It was very emotional.
It's a sense of relief, but they're trying to work on the victim and mostly focused on that.
All right. Well, it looks like you got shot here.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get these people out here.
All right. What people?
Watch that strap.
The wife, Kamaya, was trying to get in the ambulance to go with her husband.
Hey, back up! Whoa, 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 whoa. No.
What's that? Will you grab the tape for the ambulance? Get out, flip it up.
All right, ma'am. We need to secure these people here.
She was in hysterics, crying, and the police saying, "Hey, Kamaya, let us work on your husband." He was still breathing, and the officers need to preserve the scene. So the police have a lot to do in terms of maintaining the integrity of that scene, make sure people are not tampering with any evidence unintentionally.
We gotta figure out what happened, but you're gonna be in the way in there, okay? So, need you get out here, okay?
At this point, with Kamaya Hassel, I was trying to get some type of answers right away of what happened.
Do you have any idea what happened here?
No, he just brought us something to eat.
Okay.
I was sitting on the couch eating, and then I just heard gunshots.
Okay.
And I ran to put my son in the room, and I came outside, and he was laying on the cart.
Okay, how many gunshots did you hear?
I don't know, I just heard a lot.
Okay. All right, so as far as you know, he went to get some food.
No, the food was here. He brought us the food.
From where?
Our cousin's house.
Okay.
They have food at the house.
So when the food was outside, like he stepped outside to get the food?
No, the food was in the house. He was leaving.
Okay.
Me and my son were sitting on the couch eating.
She advised that she was sitting at home with her small child at that time. The victim came home and delivered some food for them just a little after 11 o'clock p.m. Once he delivered some food for her and her child, she advised that he did walk out and then heard gunshots coming from the side of the residence where the driveway is located. She came out and found her husband lying next to his motor vehicle in the driveway, severely injured with numerous gunshots to the body.
Who's this guy that's shot in the head?
That's my husband.
That's shot in the head?
Yes.
Okay. What's his name?
Tyrone Hassel. Just hurt.
My son, he did almost anything he can think of. He played baseball, basketball, football, skating, boxing. He was an all-around athlete. He was starting his second year in college, and he just was like, "Daddy, I'm going to the Army." So every time I told my friends about it, and I introduced, I was like, "Man, my son going to the Army," I would tear up, almost cry and stuff. That night, Kamaya called my phone. She called my phone and she was really hysterical. She was like, "Ty got shot." So I was like, "What? Okay, you got to be mistaken, or what happened?"
I actually work in the ER, and I was at work, and I called home to check on everybody. And my husband, he said, "Little Tyrone got shot." And I'm like, "What?" I didn't know what to do for a second. One of the other nurses, she was like, "They're en route here to the hospital." And just as quick as I could open the doors, they were actually coming through on top of him doing like chest compressions.
I was in shock. I was still in the driveway. The police wouldn't let me leave and go to the hospital right away. They wanted me to stay there. I was trying to put it all together.
You talk about a mystery right off the bat. At this point, we're just trying to figure out what actually happened.
Does he live here, this house?
We're just visiting. This is his dad's house.
Okay.
We live in Georgia. We're in the military.
The wife, Kamaya Hassel, said the Hassel family was visiting Dad over Christmas break. They're both U.S. military, stationed in Fort Stewart, down south. And we explained to her that There's an investigation, and we'll start this process and try to figure out what happened.
Was he beefing with somebody here? I mean, do you have any idea how this happened?
I'm not sure.
I mean, this is serious, okay? I don't know what his condition is, but it does not look good, okay? So, if you know something...
I don't think he was beefing with anybody.
Now's the time. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think he was beefing with anybody. He was just at his friend's house. He was at the family's house, and then he came here.
The difficulty was they were just home for Christmas break a couple weeks. Was it random? Was it a robbery? Like, what the hell just happened here, and who would do this?
It was clear to me and the investigators this was going to be a difficult case to crack, that really who done it.
I went straight to the hospital. That was my assignment, to start interviewing what witnesses we had at the hospital. When I walked into the ER, I was notified of the unfortunate death of Tyrone Hassel III.
Tyrone was 10 years old when I first met him. We were always joking and laughing and just having a good time. He was a good kid, great kid. He said, I'm gonna join the Army. I said, Tyrone, you're not doing that. Finish college. He is headstrong. A month later, he was like, oh, I'm leaving to go to boot camp tomorrow. I said, His dad was like, well, we can't stop him.
The paramedics that drove him to the hospital pulled back up to my house. And I kind of knew one of the guys. So I asked him, did he make it? And he was like, I'm sorry, Mr. Hassel, he didn't. So that's when it all fell down on me.
At the hospital, I looked in his face. When I looked in his face, I already knew that he was dead when I looked in his face, because his eyes, I could only see the bottom portion.
I had so many different thoughts, so many different if this or what ifs. I couldn't wrap my hands around it because of the person he was, and I knew he didn't have enemies, and I knew he was a good kid, and who could have done this?
You see that bullet hole in the garage? Simply due to the fact that all these casings are here, and there's a hole right there, which is obviously
blood out. That looks like somebody that was probably helping drag him out.
right.
Every homicide, we're investigating everything. There was blood on the truck. There was blood on the driveway itself. There was brain matter on the truck, multiple shell casings that were eventually seized as evidence, scattered around the victim.
So, Ron, what I'm thinking is, I mean, there's brain matter there, so he was shot point blank range.
Oh, yeah.
So somebody had to be laying in wait for his ass.
Yep.
Because he was shot right here.
So the first thing the police are looking at are any possible motivations for this, any possible suspects. They thought it might have been a robbery gone wrong, but Sergeant Hassel still had money on him, still had a cell phone on him, his car keys were still there. It didn't look like the car had been gone through. So I think the idea that it was a robbery gone wrong was kind of dismissed somewhat early.
Casings, and he might have been coming out getting the truck, and
No, he was coming out to leave again. And his keys are right there.
And when you're looking at the wounds, the close proximity of them, shots, multiple shots to Sergeant Hassel's head, his face, his shoulder, and his neck, it seemed like this was more of a personal crime than a random act of violence.
This was a hit. This was an intended target. It was personal, very personal.
And the fact that the bullet hole's there means that the shooter was over on
Right.
the side and then the casings.
Right.
We got a bullet right there. Bullet.
Okay.
And then we got the casings.
So you do the photographs, right?
He was parked right in front of the garage, and the rounds obviously went into the garage. So we knew the shooter came from in back of him because he was standing basically in the doorway of his motor vehicle.
One of the initial leads that they received early on was that Sergeant Hassel had gone to Walmart to purchase some ammunition the night of the murder.
The ammunition that Tyrone Hassel III purchased at Walmart was 9mm ammunition, which is the same type of ammunition that was used ultimately in the homicide of Tyrone Hassel III.
There's something to look into. Well, why was he buying ammunition? Did he need it for defense? So the investigators went to Walmart, pulled all the security video, were able to determine that he did run into 2 other people at the Walmart when he was there.
And he was talking to some individuals next to him in line at Walmart. Maybe he had some feud with these customers. We had to look into this aspect of the investigation, see if there was any correlation with the subjects that he was talking to at Walmart and then the homicide that occurred a couple hours later.
We had the lead about the Walmart purchase of ammunition for Sergeant Hassel, and that's obviously a concern because he is buying ammunition for a firearm, and then we find out that he runs into 2 people while he's in Walmart. So it could be a very significant piece as to what happened that night. So that's why we had to dig into that to see who these people are, try and figure that out right away.
We got with Tyrone Hassel Jr., showed him photos of the surveillance tapes at Walmart.
Last night when he went to Walmart, he was with a few guys. And there's a little bit of confusion. That's him there, right? Can't really tell who those guys are here. This guy here. And then, you know them too?
Don't.
No?
This one kind of looks familiar, but I can't even make it up.
Yeah. Those photos are printed on paper and they're blurry. That's the car those 2 were driving.
They was in a different car?
In that car, yeah. They drove separate from him, but they checked out and hung out with him in the store. And here's
Take a picture of it?
Yeah.
He was trying to help in this investigation. He was really wanting to be helpful, to show friends of his in the community if they knew anything.
Far-fetched, man. I know how it is dealing with a murder case.
Yeah, and this is one of them. It's really a true whodunit. You know, I mean, you don't. Tyrone doesn't know. I mean, he doesn't have any beef. So we gotta know who's upset with him, and right now we don't have that.
Before he left for the military, do you remember him having any beef with anybody? No arguments, nothing. Somebody pulled a grudge for a long time.
Now,
that was even before he went to school, man. He went to school.
Yeah.
I mean, that's tough interviewing family members. You just have to go through everything and make sure you're not missing any leads.
And the person he probably took off that way, but he didn't come from that way.
Yeah.
He came from this way. There's a bullet hole in my garage and my fence.
Yeah. Yeah. So at some point they were definitely shooting that way.
All the shells was in the same spot.
Yeah.
I seen it. I mean, I couldn't come past the tape, but I was looking.
You got to realize how bad is it for a U.S. military personnel to come home on Christmas vacation with his family, walk outside, and get executed. That's a lot to take with their family members.
And I can't say with 100% certainty, but it sounds like when Tyrone was on the ground, they shot him again. I can't say 100% that's what happened, but typically when you're shooting and it's that type of a situation, you don't usually get two rounds in the head.
I wonder if he knows something.
Through the investigation, we did some interviews, and it was learned that 2 guys he was interacting with at Walmart, they were just friends from when he's in high school or something. It had nothing to do with this investigation. It had nothing to do with his death. So we get pieces of the puzzles and put them together, and Tyrone was just murdered in the driveway for no apparent reason, no motive at that time.
So early on in the investigation, Tyrone Hassel II was just in complete disbelief that his son had been targeted and just couldn't figure out why. And he initially spoke with the police officers about it possibly being wrong place, wrong time. They were after somebody else. So we asked him to come down to the police station, and he gave some information.
If I tell you that this guy, who I think did it to my son, ain't a black person, that he's not a black person, would y'all treat him the same way?
Absolutely.
I think I know who did this to my son.
Okay.
So on any case like this, they're going to investigate every lead that comes in. And Tyrone Hassel II had a viable lead.
That's the first screenshot.
Oh.
Tyrone Hassel II did a lot of work in going over social media posts, reviewing all types of Facebook posts that were online to see if that could lead to any possible evidence about who had committed the crime.
That's what you're thinking?
Now, you know my son,
Yep.
my stepson,
Yeah.
he's into a bunch of
Oh, we know.
He thought maybe the kill was after Sergeant Hassel's stepbrother, who had been having some troubles and some problems with other groups of people. So this might have been a hit targeted at Sergeant Hassel's stepbrother.
It could have been the mistaken identity. All of these questions were run through my mind.
I didn't think it was mistaken identity because our other son, he has long, dreads down his shoulders. And little Tyrone doesn't have a drop of hair.
So we interviewed his stepbrother, received statements from him, followed up those interviews with other witnesses, and really took that lead as far as we could. For about a week, they were interviewing different people.
Through this investigation, evidence that we were coming up with, his stepson wasn't involved ultimately in this investigation at all.
So on any case like this, when you don't have any initial suspects, they're investigating everything.
We have a good relationship with the community. And in any investigation, we always had tips coming in. Somebody told us Tyrone Hassel III went to the roller rink area and maybe had a verbal confrontation with somebody. So investigators located Tyrone Hassel III's friend, Dylan. We did bring him in and talk to him.
What did you see there?
So when we got there, when we see him, I'm speaking, he just give us an odd look, and then Tyrone cut out early.
So this drama dude was on Apple Street too?
Yeah.
Wherever that was?
Yeah, and he just give off this vibe.
They mentioned then there was a verbal altercation with a guy named, street name of Drama at that time. Could this be related at any point with retaliation? Then investigators brought in another friend. Follow-up leads on that.
So the reason I'm here, you were at the roller rink Sunday night with Ty. Is that what you guys call him? Ty?
Yeah, Ty or Tyrone.
Okay. So Did you see anything happen out there that looked funny or anything like that? Because one of the guys that was with you saw him and Drama have like some kind of like a gaze, maybe a glare type thing that happened.
No, I didn't. I didn't see anything.
No.
Majority of the time he was there, he was just skating.
Did you see where Drama was at all? Did you know who I'm talking about?
I didn't see it. I know him by the name of Drama, but
Do you?
I didn't see him.
Okay.
He kind of squashed that theory of Drama. The altercation he did not believe was related to this investigation.
This is just one of the many leads. We've got a couple different names getting thrown out there, and Drama was one of them.
Hope this thing comes to a head and they find out what's going on, because
Yep.
it's weird because you don't have random gunshot type stuff happening on Colfax.
Oh, no.
Roller rink, that didn't pan out at all.
We were, I don't want to say just spinning tires up here, but we were just not making any headway. You're banging your head against the wall essentially, and you just keep running dead end after dead end. So it's incredibly frustrating.
Through the investigation, a resident came forward who said the night of the shooting, there was a vehicle backed into a driveway at a residence. That was a very important lead at that point. That gave us probably one of our first big clues.
Hey, Walt, how are you?
Ornery as ever.
Ornery as ever?
Yeah.
Hi. We had, not bad. We've had better days in St. Joe Township.
Yes.
We've had a shooting over there, and Frank said you saw a vehicle parked over here?
You parked right in Brown's driveway, backed in.
Okay.
The reason I know all this, I was in my bedroom watching TV and I had the shades open. I could see everything that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
He got out of it. Well, first of all,
About what time was this?
9:30, 10.
Okay.
Somewhere around there, right? Anyway, first time he was there, and then he left, come back about 15, 20 minutes later. But when he come back, I'd bet money on it. He was doing 50 miles an hour going up.
50?
At least. And he turned around up there, come back, turned his lights off, backed into the driveway, waited there for a while. He knew I was watching, I think. But anyway, he stepped out of his car, got back in. A couple of seconds later, he got out again, completely, and started walking. And I watched him, he went and turned left.
Okay.
And I just add two together, he has something to do with it.
Okay. Did you hear anything?
When I was in bed, yeah.
Okay, what'd you hear?
Gunshots.
Okay. Then after that, did you see anything?
No, I was in, like I say, I was in bed. And I heard, it woke me up.
Okay.
And
So
I'm deaf in my left ear.
The resident said the night of the shooting, there was a vehicle, a four-door black-colored vehicle backed into a residence that was for sign sale in a vacant house. So that helped us out immensely. Through the Michigan State Police, we were able to get a license plate reader hit off a vehicle coming in and out of Illinois toll booth areas with camera surveillance. That vehicle came back to a person in the U.S. military with Tyrone Hassel, the 3rd, in the same battalion.
So that was a really difficult thing to wrestle with for the investigators. You know, where's this investigation going?
Through the investigation, that vehicle came back to a person in the U.S. military named Jeremy Cuellar, part of the same squad members of their unit with Tyrone Hassel, the 3rd.
We were able to track his license plate through license plate readers in Michigan that put him right near the scene of the crime on the day it took place. That was very valuable in the investigation to help sort of crack the case open, as they say.
Before, We wanted to talk to Jeremy Quayer. Immediately, we contacted Fort Stewart, investigators with the U.S. Army.
We went to everybody in the platoons that they were involved with and interviewed one gentleman in the Army, Sergeant Bacon, and he had some personal firsthand knowledge about Jeremy Quayer and Kamaya Hassel, Sergeant Hassel's wife.
Then you said you were hanging out with Quay yesterday. So how often you hang out with Quay?
Since we got back to the States, not as much. We had a career since when everybody was like right there. It was like every day.
So when y'all would hang out, what would y'all typically do?
Talk and drink and just chill out in the room.
Okay. So any relationships between any of those people in that group going on?
I mean, in Korea, I knew Quay and Hassel messed around, and then that was it.
All right. Tell me what you know about that.
I seen them together, mess around, and then that was it. Like, everybody had their own little battle in career.
So when you say messing around, what are you getting at with that? Because obviously, everybody's got different.
Oh yeah, like sexually.
Okay.
Sergeant Bacon indicated when they were stationed in Korea that he had seen Kamaya Hassel and Jeremy Quayer with each other in the same dorm room with each other, in bed with each other.
So how did you know they were involved like that?
I found out when I was in the building and I went to her room. Knocked on the door. I was like, "Can I get some food?" Because she was always females always cook, and she was like, "You can get some." And I see him in the bed, and I was like, "Oh, really?" She was like, "Yeah, keep it on the DL." And I was like, "All right, it's not my business." So yeah, left it at that.
The relationship with Jeremy Quayer and Sergeant Hassel's wife is kind of a really important piece in this puzzle. It adds a lot to the motivation, why certain things may have taken place or why certain things happened.
It's a lot to take with me, and I call it what the hell moment. Excuse my language, but it was. The wheels started turning real fast. It's like throwing gas on a fire. We needed to start looking at Kamaya Hassel.
We really didn't know what we had. We knew we could possibly have a lady that was being stalked by Jeremy, who was obsessed by her. Maybe this person had done the homicide by himself. Maybe she was part of it. Maybe she was innocent of it. At this point, we didn't really know what we had. So at that point, I started to ask her about this Jeremy to get her side of the story as far as what is a relationship at this point.
What was going on? When did you guys become romantic? You guys seen each other while he was in Michigan? Now listen, did you see him while you're in Michigan? Because they're going to take your phone apart. When they take your phone apart, it's all there. So what I want to say is, before they do that, I want you to be honest with me.
I told her that the computer crimes, they'll be able to get those messages back. Now whether they could or not at that point, I didn't know. But she knew at that point that she had some problems.
I've worked the same amount of hours that he worked, and I still have to come home and do everything for the baby.
I agree, that's not fair.
And it's like the reason why why the relationship and a bond was built between me and Jeremy, because he will always tell me, you don't have to worry about that. When me and you get together, I'll make sure you have your breaks. I'll do this for the baby. I'll do that. And it just made me really feel like that all of that was gonna happen.
It's funny, at this point I'd been in polygraph for about 18 years, and the part of having the extramarital affair doesn't really surprise me so much.
So, when we were in Korea, I can't really pinpoint exactly when it was, and me and Ty had this big argument, and then, I came back into the building, and I was talking to Jeremy. I'm like, man, I don't want to be with him no more. Like, I'm tired of this I don't want to deal with no more. And he was like, so why y'all still together? And I was like, we have a child, and even if I talked to him about divorcing, he probably wouldn't even, do it with me. And he was like, I can handle that. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He was like, I can handle it. Like, when I get back, I get a gun, blah, blah, blah. Well, it just started to progress.
Why did you do it in Korea?
No, it was just planned in Korea. It wasn't to be done in Korea. It was just planned in Korea when we got back to the States. But I didn't take it serious because
stop. Now listen, this is where you and I stay straight. Because you didn't take it serious because you knew he was out there that night.
Well, yeah.
With a gun.
I confront her, and then she quickly starts to explain that it started in Korea. I knew at this point now she was going to start to fold. But the cold and the calculatedness of this is something that really surprised me. I didn't see that coming.
So are you guys talking because they're going to get your correspondent every day?
He would be like, what's today looking like? And I'll be like, well, he's out cutting hair. And he's like, okay, well, we'll be up there in a few hours. And then he'll come up here and scope out and see if he'll come home by himself or if he wouldn't, and then he would try to take the opportunity.
I don't know if I would say that she manipulated him into pulling the trigger, but I think that she was definitely a much more active participant. She was part of the plan, and he said he'd take care of it.
I said, well, he's about to bring us something to eat, and then that's when he came.
So you called him and said, well, hold on, I just come back to bring food.
Yeah, I said that he was coming back to bring us something to eat.
Okay. So he comes back. Why would you divorce him?
I talked to him about it, and he didn't want to.
You put your needs, your wants above somebody's life.
I did.
A lot of times, people do not talk to us. But when she confessed throughout the interview, almost all of it was about her, how things affected her. It was just a reason that didn't have to be done, and just how calculated she was. One of the coldest people I've talked to in my 25 years.
So simultaneously, Army Criminal Investigations Division are down in Georgia, bringing in Jeremy Cuellar for an interview. That's coordinated by law enforcement, so neither have a chance to talk with one another. It's done at the exact same time, essentially, in Fort Stewart, Georgia.
You've probably seen or heard on TV shows, you have a right to remain silent, you have a right, to an attorney, those types of things. And at this point in time, do you wish to have a lawyer? Okay. So down the bottom portion, there's a non-waiver section for those that wish to have a lawyer.
Was speaking with Jeremy Cuellar, he essentially invoked his right to remain silent. And at that point, the interview had to be concluded.
Through the investigation, with all the mounting evidence we had on Kamaya, the case of Jeremy Cuellar, again, the evidence is overwhelming with Kamaya's confession that this was planned and premeditated, that he came up from Illinois to commit this homicide.
Kamaya wanted her husband dead. She didn't feel that Sergeant Hassel was taking care of her well enough. She felt like she had to do too much and was overburdened. Jeremy promised, I'll take care of you. You won't have to do any of that hard work. You won't have to do as much. I'll take care of you.
I think that what really happened that night is that Tyrone actually was bringing her and his one-year-old son back some food when they made the hit. She was at least, if not more, part of it than Jeremy. He was just happened to be the trigger man.
Kamaya Hassel was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder. The sentence for that is life without the opportunity for parole. So she will be in prison for the rest of her life. Jeremy Cuellar ended up pleading guilty to second-degree murder. And he agreed to a minimum sentence of 65 years in prison. He was 25 at the time, so he'll be eligible for parole when he's 90 years old. In all likelihood, he'll never be getting out of prison.
As I look back, her first interview, she could have won an Academy Award for that. And she stayed with the family, playing the game, a mourning widow. Her demeanor just all changed. Her true character came out, through the interview. Real callous. It's one of the worst. It's one of the top 5 cases I did in 33 years. That you remember it. Especially the initial part of it, the grieving widow, and then ultimately just a cold-blooded killer is all she was.
His legacy is the way he lived his last days. He was an Army sergeant. He was a good soldier.
Kamaya, she had us all fooled, everybody, and we catered to your every need. We were honestly scared to go in and out of our own house because we had no clue what happened.
I was still in denial. I was like, no way. It was hard for me to believe because she lived in my house for 11, almost 12 days after my son was murdered with me. And this whole time she was behind it all.
Overall, everything that the detectives done, I was very satisfied. Just the only thing that I could say that I wasn't too happy about was with our grandson. She was able to sign her rights over to her mom because our son was gone and he didn't have a voice, so we didn't have the option to have joint custody or, anything. I just don't feel like, that was right. We don't get to see him, and we definitely don't get to see Tyrone III. So I feel like you still have your life, you still have your son. We don't have anything. So that is the only thing that I feel bad about, because I feel like we lost twice.
All right. My little handsome man.
I would like him to be remembered as a person who served our country and honorably. So that's why I would never stop talking about him. I feel like I owe it to him. I really don't know if I'll let him know how proud I am of him. I would just talk to him about that, about being proud of him.
The first thing the patrol officer notices is the silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that settles over Tokyo in the early hours before dawn, but a thick, unnatural quiet, the kind that presses against the eardrums and tells you something has already gone terribly wrong. It is January 2001. The city is still recovering from the hangover of the new millennium. Neon signs flickering with the promise of a future that feels faster, sharper, more digital than ever before. And yet, in this narrow residential block on the eastern edge of the city, time appears to have stopped. A metal gate stands ajar. A light burns inside a house where no one is answering the door. Shoes are lined up neatly at the entrance, untouched, as if their owners planned to return within minutes. They never did. Inside, the air is stale, heavy with the smell of cold tatami mats and something else, something metallic, something that does not belong in a family home. The television is on, volume low, frozen on a late-night variety show rerun. A calendar hangs on the wall, the date circled in red. January 7th. A day that was supposed to mean nothing. A day that would become a wound Tokyo never fully closed. The officer steps forward, heart rate climbing, every instinct screaming. In the back room, behind a sliding door left half open, the case reveals itself not with a scream, not with blood splattered across walls, but with stillness. Too much stillness. The kind that only follows violence when it has already finished speaking. By sunrise, the street is sealed off. Yellow tape cuts across the narrow road like a scar. Neighbors gather in clusters, whispering, phones pressed to ears, eyes darting between police uniforms and the darkened windows of the house. This is not the kind of neighborhood where things like this happen. This is Tokyo. Safe, ordered, predictable. The unspoken contract between the city and its people has just been broken, and everyone can feel it. Inside the house, investigators move carefully, methodically, documenting every detail. There are no signs of forced entry, no overturned furniture, no shattered glass. Whoever came here was either invited in or knew exactly how to enter without leaving a trace. The victims are discovered in different rooms, as if time itself had moved them apart. Each scene tells a fragment of a story that refuses to form a complete sentence. There are wounds, yes, but also something stranger. The absence of urgency. No frantic calls. No neighbors reporting screams. No alarms. It is as if the house swallowed the violence whole, refusing to let it escape into the street. By mid-morning, the words unprecedented and shocking begin to appear in internal police briefings. By afternoon, they are on every news channel in the country. A family killed in their own home. No suspect. No weapon recovered. No explanation that makes sense. The media descends with surgical precision. Satellite vans line the main road. Reporters speak in hushed, urgent tones, as if raising their voices might somehow invite the horror to spread. Headlines appear within hours. Cold case in the making. Brutal home incident shocks Tokyo. Questions with no answers. The public wants details, but the police offer very little. They have learned, painfully, that this case does not behave like others. There is something off about it, something that resists familiar patterns. The killer did not take valuables. Cash remains untouched. Electronics are still plugged in. There is no obvious motive, no argument overheard, no disgruntled employee or vengeful acquaintance stepping forward under the weight of suspicion. As night falls, detectives remain inside the house, replaying the same steps again and again. They trace footprints that do not match any registered shoe size. They collect fibers that lead nowhere. They bag fingerprints that later turn out to belong to no one in the national database. It is as if the person responsible walked in from a blind spot in reality itself, committed an act of extreme violence, and then dissolved back into the city without leaving a shadow. In a metropolis of more than 12 million people, anonymity is easy. Too easy. And this case exploits that fact with ruthless efficiency. Days pass, then weeks. The initial shock gives way to a deeper, more corrosive fear. If this could happen here, it could happen anywhere. Locks are double-checked. Neighborhood watches form overnight. Hardware stores sell out of security cameras and reinforced doors. The police hold press conferences, assuring the public that everything possible is being done, that no detail is too small, that justice will come. Behind closed doors, the mood is different. Frustration sets in. Leads collapse under scrutiny. Witness statements contradict one another. A man reports seeing someone unfamiliar near the house days before the incident, but cannot describe his face. A woman recalls hearing footsteps late at night, but assumes it was nothing. Nothing, it turns out, was everything. The case file grows thick, heavy with paper and unanswered questions. Every page represents hours of work, interviews conducted, evidence processed, theories proposed and discarded. One theory suggests an outsider, someone passing through Tokyo, exploiting its density to vanish. Another points to someone closer, someone who knew the family's routine, their habits, their vulnerabilities. None of it sticks. Each explanation leaves too many gaps, too many loose ends flapping in the cold winter air. Detectives begin to argue, not loudly, but with the quiet tension of people who know they are running out of time. Months later, the house stands empty. The tape is gone, but the silence remains. No one wants to move in. Real estate agents avoid the address. Locals lower their voices when they pass by, as if the walls might still be listening. Children cross the street rather than walk in front of it. In a city that never truly sleeps, this one place feels permanently awake, forever replaying a moment that no one else can see. The victims' names fade from headlines, replaced by newer tragedies, but the case does not disappear. It sinks. It settles. It becomes a cold case, not officially, but in the way that matters most, in the collective understanding that the answers are not coming anytime soon. Years roll on. Technology advances. Databases grow. Faces are scanned. Patterns are mapped. And still nothing. The evidence is re-examined, then examined again. New detectives take over, bringing fresh eyes and fresh optimism, only to leave with the same haunted expressions as their predecessors. The city changes around the case. Buildings rise. Streets are renovated. New train lines open. But the question at the center of it all remains frozen in 2001. Locked inside that quiet house where the television still hums in the memory of those who were there. Then, just when the case has become a footnote, a reference whispered among true crime enthusiasts and veteran investigators, something shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically. A single report crosses a desk. A tip, vague, almost dismissible. The kind of thing that arrives every year and leads nowhere. Except this one is different. It references a detail never made public. A small, seemingly insignificant fact from the original crime scene, buried deep in the case file, known only to those who walked through that house in the days after January 7, 2001. The room goes quiet again, just like it did that first morning. Someone exhales slowly. Someone else closes the file they were working on. Eyes meet. For the first time in years, the past has reached out and touched the present. The case is not solved. Not yet, but it is no longer sleeping. And in Tokyo, a city built on the illusion of order, that is enough to make old fears resurface, sharp and immediate. Somewhere, someone knows what happened in that house. Somewhere, the truth has been waiting, patient, unbothered by the passage of time. As detectives reopen boxes, dust off photographs, and prepare to ask questions they never thought they would ask again, one thought hangs in the air, heavy and inescapable. If the silence of 2001 is about to be broken, whatever emerges from it will not be gentle. The silence does not break all at once. It fractures, piece by piece. In the days after that internal report surfaces, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department moves with a caution that borders on superstition. Boxes are reopened, seals cracked, evidence handled as if it might still be warm. The case number, long dormant in the system, begins to light up screens again. Access logs spike. Old names resurface in hallways where younger officers have only heard them spoken in passing, usually late at night, usually with lowered voices. This is not just another unsolved case. This is the case. The one that taught an entire generation of investigators what failure feels like. The detail mentioned in the tip is small, almost embarrassingly so. Not a weapon, not a face, not a confession, a behavior, something left behind that should not have been there, something that was cataloged, photographed, debated, and then quietly pushed aside because it led nowhere at the time. Now, 2 decades later, it comes back with context. And context changes everything. Detectives who worked the original scene are contacted. Some retired, some transferred, some carrying the weight of this case into entirely different lives. They remember the house. They remember the smell. They remember how wrong it felt. And they remember the detail. Inside the residence, there were signs of extended presence. Not haste, not panic. Someone had stayed. Long enough to move between rooms. Long enough to use household items. Long enough to leave behind traces that suggested familiarity, or at least comfort. At the time, this behavior defied logic. Why linger in a house like that, in a city like Tokyo, after committing an act that would bring the full weight of the police down on you? The assumption had been arrogance or madness, or perhaps something more unsettling, confidence. The confidence of someone who did not believe they would be caught. The tip suggests that this confidence was earned. That the person who entered that house did so with a knowledge set that went beyond floor plans and routines. It hints at prior access, prior observation, a relationship that did not leave fingerprints on family photos or phone records, but existed in the negative spaces of daily life. The people you see but do not register. The voices you hear but do not remember. In a city where millions brush past one another every day, this kind of invisibility is not rare. It is cultivated. As investigators retrace the family's final weeks, a timeline begins to thicken. Not with answers, but with pressure points. Places where something could have gone wrong without anyone noticing. A missed appointment. A routine broken once and then resumed. A neighbor who remembers a door opening at an unusual hour. A delivery that did not appear on official logs. Each fragment is small. Each fragment is deniable. But together they form a pattern that feels deliberate. Someone was testing the edges. Learning where the blind spots were. Learning how quiet the house could be. Media interest reignites almost instantly. Not because the police announce anything, but because movement has a way of leaking. A single photograph circulates online. An old crime scene image pulled from an archive and reposted with a new caption. Tokyo 2001. Reopened. The word spreads faster than any press release. Talk shows speculate. Commentators argue. Armchair detectives dust off theories that have been dormant for years. Some insist it was a foreigner. Some insist it was someone still living nearby, hiding in plain sight. The public wants a villain they can point to. The case refuses to give them one. Inside the task force room, the mood is different. There is no excitement, only restraint. Everyone remembers how quickly certainty collapsed last time. The new lead is treated not as a revelation, but as a thread, something to pull gently, carefully, knowing that it could snap at any moment. Analysts cross-reference old data with new tools. Behavioral profilers revisit their conclusions, adjusting assumptions that were once considered solid. The idea of a random intruder begins to erode. Randomness does not explain patience. It does not explain comfort. It does not explain the absence of panic. Attention turns inward, toward the family's social orbit. Friends, colleagues, casual contacts, people who were never suspects because there was nothing to suspect them of. No arguments, no debts, no threats, but proximity, it turns out, does not require intimacy. Sometimes it only requires opportunity. Investigators begin mapping routines again, not as static schedules, but as living patterns. Where did the family linger? Where did they pause? Where were they predictable? In those pauses, those predictable moments, someone could have been watching. A former detective recalls something he never wrote down. A feeling he had during the original investigation. An instinct he dismissed because it could not be proven. He remembers standing in the hallway of the house, looking at the placement of objects, the way doors were left, the way light fell through the windows. Felt staged, he says now. Not theatrically, not for an audience, but for the person who did it. As if the scene was arranged to be revisited in memory. As if the house itself was part of the experience. At the time, this sounded like overthinking. Now it sounds like insight. The task force begins to consider a possibility that was once too uncomfortable to voice. That the perpetrator may have returned. Not physically, but mentally. That the crime was not a moment, but a chapter in a longer internal narrative. That the act itself was not the end goal, but a means to something else. Control, recognition, permanence. Cold cases attract attention, yes, but they also offer something more dangerous. They allow the person responsible to exist forever in the margins, untouchable, unchallenged, watching the world move on without them. As weeks pass, the new lead produces small but unsettling confirmations. Dates align. Behaviors match. A name appears, not as a suspect, but as a recurring presence in peripheral records. Someone who lived nearby at the time. Someone whose work schedule placed them in the area during critical windows. Someone who moved shortly after the incident, not dramatically, not suspiciously, but just enough to avoid scrutiny. On paper, it means nothing. In reality, it means everything. Because patterns are not built from single facts. They are built from repetition. Still, there is no arrest. No dramatic confrontation. No press conference with flashing cameras. Just a growing sense that the ground is shifting. That the case is no longer a closed loop, but an open wound. Families of the victims are notified quietly, carefully. They have learned to protect themselves from hope. Hope has disappointed them before. They listen. They nod. They ask the question they have been asking for over 20 years. Is this real? The answer this time is honest. We don't know yet, but we're closer than we were. Tokyo continues to move, relentless and indifferent. Trains run on time. Streets glow with advertisements for things no one needed yesterday. But beneath the surface, something old is stirring. The memory of that house, that morning, that silence. People who lived through it feel it again. A tightening in the chest, a glance over the shoulder that lingers a second too long. Because reopening a cold case does not just threaten the person who committed the crime. It threatens the illusion that time alone can bury the past. And somewhere, in an apartment, an office, a quiet corner of the city, someone reads the headlines and feels a change in the air. Not fear, perhaps, not yet, but awareness. The sense that a door long believed to be sealed has shifted, just enough to let light in. The investigation moves forward, methodical, patient, knowing that if this case is going to speak after all these years, it will do so on its own terms. And whatever it says next will not be easy to hear. The first interview is conducted in a room that smells faintly of disinfectant and old paper, a place designed to be forgettable, neutral, incapable of holding secrets. The man sitting across the table does not look dangerous. He looks tired, middle-aged now, hair thinning at the temples, hands folded neatly in his lap. He answers questions politely. He remembers the year 2001, of course he does. Everyone remembers that year. New millennium, new fears. He remembers living nearby. He remembers the neighborhood. He remembers nothing unusual. His voice is steady, his posture controlled. If this were 20 years ago, the conversation might have ended there. But this is not 20 years ago. This time, investigators are listening for what is missing. They let the silence stretch longer than is comfortable. Silence has always been Tokyo's most reliable informant. In that gap, people tend to reveal themselves not with words but with adjustments. A shift in the chair. A swallow. A breath taken too early or too late. The man does not fidget. He does not rush to fill the quiet. He waits. When he speaks again, it is to clarify a detail no one asked him to clarify. A detail about the layout of the street. A detail about the house. A detail that suggests familiarity deeper than memory alone should allow. The interview ends without accusation, without pressure. The man leaves, bowing politely, thanking the officers for their time. On paper, it is a dead end. In reality, it is the first crack. Because when the transcript is reviewed later that night, one sentence stands out, underlined in red. A reference to a room he should not know existed. A reference never mentioned in public reports. A reference that matches the detail from the anonymous tip that reopened the case in the first place. The task force does not celebrate. They do not speak loudly. They do not allow themselves the luxury of optimism. They have been here before, chasing ghosts, mistaking coincidence for confession. Instead, they do what Tokyo police have always done best. They observe, quietly, patiently. They begin to reconstruct the man's life around 2001, not as a suspect, but as a presence. Where he worked, how he moved through the city, who he brushed past. The map fills with lines that intersect too often to ignore. At the same time, the house returns to the center of everything. Photographs from the original scene are scanned again, this time through software that did not exist 2 decades earlier. Patterns emerge that human eyes missed. The positioning of objects, the pathways between rooms, the way certain spaces were avoided entirely. This was not chaos. This was navigation. Someone moved through that house with intention, avoiding obstacles not because they were afraid, but because they knew where they were going. One image, grainy and overexposed, becomes the subject of intense scrutiny. A hallway shot, ordinary, unremarkable, except for a shadow at the edge of the frame. At the time, it was dismissed as lighting. Now, enhanced, stabilized, it takes on shape. Not a face, not a body, a suggestion of movement. A moment frozen between steps. It is not proof. It is not evidence that would hold up in court. But it is enough to shift the emotional center of the investigation. Enough to make the case feel alive again. The media senses it. The tone changes. Less speculation, more urgency. Former officials are invited on air, speaking carefully, choosing words that say everything without committing to anything. Significant development. Person of interest. New confession rumored. The phrase spreads faster than facts ever could. New confession. It appears in headlines, then disappears, replaced by denials and clarifications. The police refuse to confirm it. They also refuse to deny it. The ambiguity is deliberate. Pressure applied indirectly. Behind the scenes, pressure builds elsewhere too. The man is contacted again. Another interview. This time, longer. This time, more focused. He remains calm, but the rhythm of his speech changes. He corrects himself more often. He asks questions of his own. What exactly are you looking for? Why now? What changed? The investigators answer truthfully, without revealing anything of value. They are not fishing. They are waiting. waiting for the moment when the past becomes heavier than the present. That moment does not arrive in the interview room. It arrives elsewhere, in a late-night phone call to a legal aid office, in a conversation that begins with hypotheticals and ends with silence. A lawyer listens as a voice on the other end describes something that sounds too detailed to be imagined, too specific to be coincidence. The lawyer does not interrupt. When the call ends, he sits still for a long time, then reaches for the phone again. Protocol is followed. Carefully, quietly. By morning, the task force has a name on a document that changes everything. They do not call it a confession. Not yet. They call it a statement, a narrative, a version of events offered conditionally, through intermediaries, wrapped in legal language and hesitation. It is fragmented, emotional, inconsistent in places. But buried within it are details that align with the evidence in ways no outsider could replicate. The order of rooms, the sound of the floorboards, the way the light looked at a certain hour. The statement does not claim intent. It does not claim innocence either. It hovers in the space between, daring the investigators to define it. The reaction inside the department is restrained but seismic. This is what they have been waiting for. Not closure, leverage, something solid enough to test against reality. Teams are dispatched to verify every claim, every timestamp, every sensory detail. Some fail, some hold. Enough hold to make ignoring it impossible. The case shifts from theoretical to immediate, from historical to present tense. Still, the man does not surrender. There is no dramatic walk into a police station, no cameras, no handcuffs clicking shut. He continues his life, outwardly unchanged, while the investigation tightens around him like a net lowered slowly into water. Surveillance is authorized. Movements are logged. Contacts are noted. He senses it. People always do. But sensing is not the same as knowing, and knowing is not the same as proof. The families are informed again. This time, the tone is different. Cautious, but weighted. There may be someone. There may be answers. There may finally be a reason for the silence that followed January 2001. Tears are shed, then quickly wiped away. They have learned not to trust emotion. Emotion has betrayed them too many times. As the weeks stretch on, the city begins to feel the pressure too. Social media dissects every rumor. Amateur analysts freeze-frame old footage. The house becomes a symbol again, its image shared and reshared, a reminder that some places absorb pain and never let it go. People who were children in 2001 ask their parents about it for the first time. The past becomes present, invasive, impossible to ignore. Inside the task force room, one question dominates everything. Why now? Why speak after all this time? The answer is not singular. Guilt is considered, then dismissed. Fear is considered, then reframed. More likely, it is erosion. Time has worn something down. A certainty. A sense of invulnerability. The belief that silence was permanent. The reopening of the case has cracked that belief, letting doubt seep in where confidence once lived. And doubt is dangerous. Doubt makes people talk. The statement is not enough to end the case. It is enough to transform it. The cold case is no longer cold. It is volatile. Every move from this point forward carries risk. A wrong step could collapse everything. A right one could finally force the truth into the open. As investigators prepare for what comes next, they understand something with absolute clarity. The most difficult part of this case was never finding the person who did it. It was waiting for the moment when they would no longer be able to stay silent. The surveillance begins without ceremony. No sirens. No dramatic stakeouts under rain-soaked streetlights. Just quiet observation, the kind that blends into the background of a city already saturated with cameras and routines. The man becomes a pattern on a screen. Morning commute. Evening return. Convenience store stops timed almost to the minute. He lives like someone who believes his life is settled, finished in its important chapters. That belief is what makes him dangerous now. People who think the past is behind them rarely notice when it starts closing in from the sides. Investigators notice the first anomaly within days. A deviation so small it would mean nothing to anyone else. A missed train, a longer walk home, a pause outside a building that has no obvious significance. The analysts mark it, then watch as it repeats. Not daily, not predictably, but enough to suggest intention. The city offers endless reasons to stop, to wait, to linger. What matters is where. What matters is how often. And what matters most is what those places have in common. They map them. Overlays of old and new Tokyo. Buildings demolished, streets widened, neighborhoods renamed. And there it is, emerging like a ghost from beneath the modern grid. The same radius, the same core, the area surrounding the house. Not the exact location, not the address itself, but the perimeter. As if something invisible still exerts gravity there. As if the man cannot help but orbit it, even 20 years later. Psychologists are brought in quietly, not to profile a killer, but to interpret behavior that no longer fits neatly into categories. They speak of unresolved narratives, of events that remain unfinished in the mind, of people who return again and again, not because they want to relive what they did, but because some part of them is still waiting for something to happen. Exposure, recognition, punishment, or absolution. The investigators listen, but they do not commit. Psychology explains motive. It does not replace evidence. That evidence begins to accumulate in fragments. Old receipts recovered from storage. Employment records that place the man closer to the area than he admitted. A coworker who remembers him asking strange questions in early 2001. Questions about shift changes. About which entrances were locked at night. At the time, it seemed like idle curiosity. In retrospect, it feels like rehearsal. Each fragment on its own is weak. Together, they form pressure. Not enough to arrest. Enough to confront. The confrontation is planned with precision. Not an ambush. An invitation. A request for clarification. The man arrives on time, dressed conservatively, expression neutral. He has been expecting this, though he would never say it. The interview room feels smaller this time. Or perhaps it is the distance between him and the investigators that has shrunk. They begin by asking about his routine, about his movements, about places he frequents. He answers smoothly, but the cadence is off. He speaks too carefully, as if each word is being checked against an internal script. Then they change nothing and everything. They slide a photograph across the table. Not the house, not the victims. A street corner. Ordinary, unremarkable. One of the places he has been lingering. His eyes flicker. Just once. It is enough. He says he does not remember being there. The investigators do not argue. They show him another, then another. Dates, times, patterns. Still no accusation. Just a quiet demonstration that the city has been watching him the way he once watched someone else. The room tightens. He leans back, crosses his arms, then uncrosses them. He asks for a break. It is granted. Alone, behind the one-way glass, the investigators wait. They have learned that silence is more effective than pressure. When he returns, something has shifted. His voice is softer, less controlled. He asks again why this is happening now. One investigator answers evenly without emotion, because someone talked. The words hang in the air, heavy, ambiguous. The man nods slowly, as if confirming something he already suspected. What follows is not a confession. It is a negotiation with memory. He speaks in conditional language. If this happened, if someone did this, if mistakes were made. He describes feelings rather than actions. Fear, confusion, a sense of unreality. He avoids specifics. He avoids chronology. But every so often a detail slips through. A sound, a smell, a sequence that aligns too closely with the evidence to dismiss. Each time it happens, the investigators note it, store it, add it to the growing structure around him. Outside the room, the case reverberates. Word spreads within legal circles that something significant is unfolding. Reporters chase confirmations that never come. Headlines hedge. Breakthrough. Possible confession? Police remain silent. Silence, in this case, is not emptiness. It is containment. The department remembers what happened when this case became a spectacle before. They will not let that happen again. The families wait. Again. This time, waiting feels different. Heavier. More dangerous. Hope creeps in despite their efforts to keep it out. Hope is cruel. It sharpens anticipation, then punishes expectation. They are told only what they must know. There is progress. There is movement. Nothing is final. They cling to routine, to normalcy, because the alternative is to relive January 2001 all over again. As the investigation deepens, the focus shifts subtly but decisively. From what happened to why it unfolded the way it did. Why there was no haste. Why the house remained quiet. Why the killer did not flee immediately. The answers point toward something deeply personal but not intimate. Obsession without affection. Curiosity without empathy. The psychologists return, this time with sharper conclusions. This was not rage. Not revenge. It was intrusion. The violation of a boundary for its own sake. The act of entering a life and rearranging it permanently. That interpretation unsettles even seasoned investigators. Crimes driven by anger burn out. Crimes driven by obsession smolder. They linger. They revisit. They adapt. Which raises a question no one wants to ask out loud. If this man did it really end in 2001? They search records. They search reports. They find nothing conclusive. But absence is not reassurance. It is uncertainty wearing a familiar disguise. The man is released after the interview. Again, no charges, no cuffs. He walks back into the city, posture slightly altered, steps quicker than before. Surveillance resumes. This time he knows it is there. His behavior changes. Routes shift. Stops disappear. He avoids the old perimeter. Avoidance, the analysts note, is as telling as fixation. It suggests awareness. And awareness suggests fear. Then comes the document. Not from him. From his lawyer. A formal statement submitted voluntarily. Carefully worded. Legally cautious. It acknowledges presence in the area in 2001. It acknowledges knowledge of the house. It stops just short of admission. But it contains one line that sends a chill through the task force. A line describing the moment after everything was over. The quiet, the stillness, the feeling that time had paused. A sensation described by officers who were there, but never released publicly. Never shared. Never leaked. The room goes silent as the line is read aloud. There it is. The echo. The same silence that greeted the patrol officer 20 years earlier. The same unnatural quiet. The past has spoken again, and this time it has a voice. Still, the law demands more. Truth is not enough. It must be provable. The task force accelerates, knowing they are balancing on the edge of something fragile. Too much pressure could shatter it. Too little could let it slip away forever. Warrants are prepared. Searches authorized. Digital histories excavated from obsolete devices. Old hard drives spin again for the first time in decades. And as the net tightens, one final question looms, unspoken but ever present. Is this the end of the silence, or just the moment before it screams? The warrant is executed at dawn, not because dawn is dramatic, but because dawn is quiet, and quiet is where this case has always lived. The apartment is smaller than expected. Clean. Orderly. The kind of place that tells you nothing at first glance. Investigators move through it methodically, photographing shelves, cataloging drawers, bagging devices whose relevance is not yet clear. Old phones. Discs. A laptop so outdated it feels like an artifact. Nothing screams guilt. Nothing tries to hide. And that, in itself, feels familiar. In the bedroom closet, behind winter coats that have not been worn in years, they find a box. Unlabeled. Unlocked. Inside are items that do not belong together except by intention. Newspaper clippings from early 2001. Folded carefully, edges worn soft by handling. A printed map of the neighborhood, creased and marked with faint pencil lines that trace paths between streets, pauses at corners, stops that mirror the man's recent movements almost perfectly. And beneath it all, wrapped in plain cloth, something that makes the room stop breathing for a moment. A small object, mundane, easily overlooked, but identical to something documented at the original crime scene and never publicly disclosed. The discovery is logged, photographed, sealed. No one speaks until it is done. This is not triumph. This is confirmation, the kind that settles into the body slowly, like cold. The object alone does not prove anything. Could be coincidence. Could be planted. It could be explained away by a good lawyer and a patient jury. But in context, surrounded by 20 years of silence and half-answers, it carries weight. It changes the shape of the case. The man is brought in again. This time, there is no pretense of routine. He knows why he is here. The interview room feels different now, heavier, charged. He looks smaller somehow, as if the walls have moved closer. The investigators lay the evidence out in stages, not to overwhelm him, but to let each piece land. The clippings, the map, the object. He watches, jaw tightening, eyes fixed on the table. When he finally looks up, the confidence that once held him together is gone. In its place is calculation. He speaks first, not to confess but to control the narrative. He explains the clippings as curiosity, the map as nostalgia, the object as something he found years ago and kept without understanding why. His explanations are coherent, plausible, carefully constructed, but they lack emotion. They lack the messiness that accompanies real memory. He talks about the past as if it belongs to someone else, as if he is describing a story he once heard, not a life he lived. The investigators change tactics. They stop asking questions and start describing moments from the crime scene. Not accusingly, clinically, the way the air felt, the way the house absorbed sound, the unnatural quiet. They watch his reactions closely. His breathing changes. His shoulders rise. When they mention the object, the one found in his closet, he closes his eyes briefly, as if bracing against a physical sensation. When he opens them again, there is something new there. Not fear, recognition. He does not confess, not outright. What he does instead is begin to speak in fragments. Not about the act itself but about what came before and after. About being drawn to the house. About walking the neighborhood at night, learning its rhythms. About the way some places feel open if you watch them long enough. He describes a sense of inevitability, as if events were pulling him forward rather than being chosen. The investigators let him talk. This is not the time to interrupt. As he speaks, a pattern emerges, not of violence but of intrusion. He frames everything as observation, curiosity, proximity. The moment of the crime itself remains obscured, surrounded by language that softens edges and blurs responsibility. He talks about silence again, about how loud it felt, about how it seemed to stretch. The same words, the same sensations, the same details, each one another thread tying him to that house in January 2001. Outside the room, legal teams prepare for battle. This case will not be won by implication. It will hinge on whether fragments can be assembled into a structure strong enough to stand in court. Prosecutors debate strategy late into the night. Do they push for charges now, risking collapse? Or do they wait, build, let the pressure do what interrogation cannot? The decision is made to wait, to let the man live with the knowledge that the past has caught up to him, that the silence he relied on is no longer absolute. The city reacts in its own way. News breaks of a search, of items recovered, of a person questioned repeatedly. Names are withheld, but speculation fills the gap. Online forums light up with theories. Some celebrate prematurely. Some warn against another false hope. Those who remember the original case feel something twist inside them, a cautious stirring they do not trust. Tokyo has learned to be skeptical of endings. The families are informed of the search, of the items, of the direction the investigation is taking. This time, there are tears that do not stop quickly. This time, there is anger mixed with relief. Anger at the years stolen, relief that the waiting may finally have shape. They ask the question again. Is this enough? The answer is the same, but it sounds different now. It's getting there. As weeks pass, the pressure intensifies. The man withdraws from public life. He stops commuting, stops visiting familiar places. Surveillance notes nights where lights stay on until morning. Sleep becomes irregular. Isolation sets in. Psychologists explain this as the collapse of compartmentalization. The walls he built between who he was and who he pretended to be are eroding. He is being forced to occupy the same space as his memories, and they are loud. Then comes the mistake. Small. Human. A conversation recorded unintentionally. A remark made to someone he trusted. Someone who did not realize the weight of what they were hearing until much later. The remark references a sequence of events that matches the crime scene chronology too precisely to ignore. It is not a confession. It is not dramatic. It is devastating, because it aligns with everything else. Prosecutors move. Charges are drafted carefully, deliberately. Not everything. Not yet. Enough to bring him before a judge. Enough to force the story into the open. The arrest is quiet. No spectacle. Just a man being asked to stand, to turn, to place his hands where he can see them. As he is led away, he does not resist. He does not speak. His face is unreadable, but his eyes betray something like resignation. The city exhales and holds its breath at the same time. For the first time since 2001, there is a face attached to the silence. Possibility of answers, but also a new fear, because answers have consequences. They reshape memory. They challenge narratives people have lived with for decades. The trial looms, and with it the risk that the truth, once exposed, will be more unsettling than the mystery ever was. In the quiet after the arrest, an investigator returns to the old case file one last time. He reads the notes he wrote 20 years ago, the doubts he dismissed, the instincts he ignored. He realizes something then, something that has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. This case was never asleep. It was waiting for the moment when silence could no longer protect the person who relied on it. The courtroom does not feel like an ending. It feels like a threshold. A place where silence is exchanged for structure, where fragments are forced into sequence whether they belong together or not. The man sits at the defense table, suit pressed, expression carefully neutral, as if composure itself might still serve as armor. Behind him, rows of seats fill with journalists, observers, people who have waited 20 years to see this room become relevant. The judge enters. Everyone stands. And just like that, the case that once lived in shadows is dragged into the light. The prosecution moves first, not with drama, but with restraint. They know the weight of expectation in this room. They know how easily it could turn against them. This is not a case built on a single piece of evidence. It is a mosaic, fragile and complex, vulnerable to doubt. So they begin at the beginning not with the crime, but with the silence that followed it. They describe a house that absorbed violence and gave nothing back. A city that swallowed a man whole. A gap that refused to close for 2 decades. They frame the case not as a hunt for a monster, but as a slow erosion of secrecy. The defense listens carefully. They have prepared for this. Their strategy is clear from the outset. Reasonable doubt, coincidence, contamination of memory. They argue that time itself is the unreliable witness here, that recollections harden into belief, that investigators see what they want to see after so many years of failure. They emphasize what is missing. No DNA that conclusively points to their client. No eyewitness placing him inside the house. No direct admission of guilt. They ask the jury to remember that suspicion is not proof. Witnesses are called. Old detectives, now grayer, slower, but still precise. They recount the original investigation, the frustration, the dead ends. Some admit mistakes. Others admit uncertainty. The defense seizes on every hesitation. The prosecution allows it. Transparency, they know, builds credibility. Then the newer investigators take the stand. They speak of patterns, of behavior, of details that align too closely to dismiss. They describe the object found in the apartment, the map, the statements, the fragments that, together, point in one direction. The man watches all of this without visible reaction. But those closest to him notice the changes. The tightening of his jaw when certain dates are mentioned. The way his eyes drop when the house is described. The momentary stillness when the word silence is spoken aloud, stripped of metaphor and placed on the record. These are not evidence. They are impressions. And impressions in a courtroom are dangerous. The families sit together, hands clasped, eyes fixed forward. They have waited so long for this that it feels unreal. When photographs from the crime scene are shown, some look away. Others force themselves to watch, as if witnessing is a form of responsibility. Tears fall silently. No one cries out. This is not grief in motion. This is grief that has learned to hold itself still. As days turn into weeks, the trial takes on a rhythm. Testimony, cross-examination, objections. The city outside continues to move, but inside the courtroom, time bends back toward 2001 again and again. The prosecution introduces expert testimony on behavioral patterns, on the psychology of intrusion, on the significance of lingering. The defense counters with experts of their own, arguing alternative explanations, challenging assumptions, reminding the jury that behavior is not destiny. Then comes the moment everyone has been anticipating. The prosecution calls the man's former acquaintance, the one who heard the remark. The room tightens. The witness is nervous, hands shaking slightly as they take the oath. They describe a conversation that seemed ordinary at the time, a casual exchange that only gained weight later. They repeat the words as accurately as they can remember them. Words that mirror the sequence of events from the crime scene. Words that suggest presence, awareness, knowledge. The defense attacks immediately. Memory is fallible. Conversations blur. People misremember, especially under pressure. They imply influence, suggestion, the subtle reshaping of recollection after media exposure. The witness falters, then steadies themselves. They admit uncertainty. They do not claim perfection, but they insist on one thing. Those words stayed with them because they felt wrong, because they carried a weight that did not belong to casual conversation. The jury listens. Some take notes. Some stare ahead, unreadable. This is the heart of the case now. Not what can be proven beyond all doubt, but what can be believed beyond reasonable doubt. The line between the two is thin, and everyone in the room knows it. Midway through the trial, the defense makes a move no one expects. They signal that their client may testify. The courtroom buzzes. Reporters lean forward. The prosecution masks its reaction. This is a gamble. If he speaks, he opens himself to cross-examination. But he also gains the chance to tell his story, to frame his past in his own words. After a brief recess, the decision is confirmed. He takes the stand calmly, swears the oath, sits. For a moment he says nothing. Then he begins. He speaks of his life in 2001, of isolation, of routine, of walking the city at night because it made him feel invisible in a way that was comforting. He admits to watching the neighborhood, admits to curiosity, admits to entering spaces he should not have entered, though he stops short of naming the house. He describes the night in question obliquely, circling it without landing. When asked directly if he was inside the house, he pauses. The room holds its breath. He says he cannot be sure, that memory is fragmented, that time has blurred edges, that he remembers silence, but not its source. The defense frames this as honesty. The prosecution sees opportunity. Cross-examination is surgical. They walk him through his previous statements, his lawyer's submission, the details only someone inside the house could know. They do not accuse. They ask. They let his own words tighten around him. When confronted with the object found in his apartment, he struggles to explain its presence convincingly. When asked why he returned to the area years later, he speaks of nostalgia, of unresolved feelings. The word unresolved hangs in the air like an admission he did not intend to make. At one point, the prosecutor asks him a simple question. Why didn't you leave immediately? The courtroom goes still. He hesitates, just a fraction too long. Then he answers quietly because it felt quiet, because everything had stopped. The words land heavily. They echo the language used by officers, by investigators, by his own earlier statements. Silence once again betrays him. The defense objects. The judge sustains, but the damage is done. The jury has heard it. The man steps down from the stand looking smaller than before. Not defeated. Exposed. Closing arguments approach. Both sides marshal their narratives. The defense warns against conviction built on atmosphere and assumption. The prosecution speaks of patterns, of convergence, of a truth that does not rely on a single moment but on an accumulation that cannot be ignored. They remind the jury that some crimes are designed to leave nothing behind, and that the absence of evidence can itself be engineered. When the jury retires to deliberate, the courtroom empties slowly. No one celebrates. No one speaks confidently. This case has taught everyone involved to distrust certainty. Hours pass, then days. The city waits. The families wait. The man waits in a holding cell, alone with his thoughts, with memories that no longer stay quiet. When the verdict finally comes, it is delivered without flourish. The jury files in. Everyone stands. The foreperson's voice is steady, but the room feels like it might crack open at any second. Guilty on some counts. Not guilty on others. The words blur together in the aftermath. What matters is that the silence has been pierced, but not fully destroyed. The sentence is handed down later. Years. Not life. Not nothing. A compromise shaped by evidence and doubt. The families feel relief and anger in equal measure. Relief that something has been acknowledged. Anger that it took so long that it did not go further. The man is led away again, this time permanently altered by exposure rather than force. Outside, cameras flash. Headlines race ahead of nuance. Some call it justice. Others call it incomplete. Tokyo absorbs it all as it always does. The house remains empty. The silence remains, changed but not erased. And in the quiet that follows the verdict, one truth settles in, undeniable and unsettling. Solving a cold case does not end its story. It only changes who has to live with it next. The verdict does not close the door. It shifts the weight against it, leaving a narrow gap where questions still breathe. In the days after sentencing, the city reacts in fragments. Some neighborhoods feel lighter, as if an old pressure has been released. Others feel exposed, newly aware that resolution can arrive incomplete and still call itself justice. The headlines fade quickly, replaced by the next scandal, the next disaster, the next distraction. But for those closest to the case, the aftermath is louder than the trial ever was. Inside the police department, the task force is formally disbanded. Files are archived again, this time with annotations that feel final but do not read that way. Guilty on some counts, unresolved on others. The language is precise, cautious, legally sound. Emotion has no place in official records. But between the lines, there is fatigue. The kind that settles after a long pursuit ends not with triumph, but with a complicated truth that refuses to simplify itself. The families meet privately, away from cameras and microphones. They speak openly now, without fear of compromising an investigation. Some feel vindicated. Others feel cheated. They argue gently, then fiercely, about what closure means. One family member says closure is a word people use when they don't understand what loss does over time. Another says acknowledgement matters more than perfection. No one fully agrees. No one leaves unchanged. The house becomes an issue again. What to do with it? Demolish it? Preserve it? Leave it empty as a warning? Or erase it as an act of mercy? City officials debate quietly. Developers circle. Locals resist. The house is no longer just a property. It is a symbol, a physical reminder that violence does not always announce itself and justice does not always arrive cleanly. In the end, nothing is decided. The house stays, waiting as it always has. In prison, the man adapts with unsettling ease. He follows rules, keeps his head down, reads obsessively. He receives letters from strangers who believe him guilty, innocent, misunderstood, or profound. He reads them all. He never replies. Guards note his tendency to sit in silence for long stretches, eyes unfocused, as if listening to something no one else can hear. Psychologists evaluate him again, this time not as a suspect, but as an inmate. Their reports speak of compartmentalization, of cognitive distance, of a man who experiences memory as a landscape he can enter and exit at will. But memory is not static. It shifts under pressure. As months turn into years, cracks appear. He begins requesting access to old newspapers, to court transcripts, to photographs from the trial. He studies them not with regret, but with a kind of academic curiosity. As if checking his own recollections against the official record. As if measuring how much of the story still belongs to him. Outside the prison walls, something unexpected happens. A former investigator receives an email. Short, anonymous, no return address. It references a detail from the case that was never used in court. A detail considered irrelevant. The email does not accuse. It asks a question. Did you ever check the storage unit? The investigator reads it twice, then a third time. He should ignore it. He knows that. This case has taught him the cost of chasing every shadow. But something about the phrasing feels deliberate, informed, familiar. He brings it to his superiors. Reluctantly, the file is reopened, not officially, but enough to verify one thing. The man did, in fact, rent a storage unit in early 2001. The records were incomplete. The unit was cleared years ago, contents auctioned off without scrutiny. Another gap. Another silence. The investigator feels a familiar tightening in his chest. The case may be legally resolved, but it is not finished telling its story. The media catches wind of the inquiry within days. Speculation ignites again. Was there more? Was something missed? Commentators argue over whether reopening aspects of the case undermines the verdict or honors the truth. The families are informed carefully. They react with exhaustion rather than hope. Not again, they say. Not unless it means something. Inside the prison, the man senses the shift before anyone tells him. Requests are denied. Routines change. He is questioned briefly, informally about the storage unit. He smiles faintly for the first time in years. Not with amusement, with recognition. He says he barely remembers it. That time was chaotic. That he moved things without thinking. His tone is dismissive, but his eyes give him away. There is something there. Something he thought had been forgotten. Psychologists note the change. The resurfacing of a secondary narrative. Many offenders, they explain, construct layers. What they admit, what they conceal, what they convince themselves never happened. The existence of the storage unit suggests a layer that remained intact through trial. Private archive, or a disposal point, or simply another place where silence was stored. Investigators track the auction records. Items sold cheaply, unremarkable. Furniture, boxes of papers, personal effects. Most are gone. But one buyer is traced. An elderly man who purchased several boxes years ago, thinking they contained old books. He still has some of them, in his garage, unopened. When investigators arrive, the air feels heavy again. Familiar. They open the boxes carefully. Inside are notebooks, filled with writing, dense, repetitive, observational, dates, times, descriptions of streets, houses, routines. Not just one house, several. A pattern broader than anyone anticipated. The notebooks do not describe violence. They describe watching, learning, waiting. They are a catalog of intrusion without action, except for one period in early 2001, where the entries become sparse, fragmented, then stop entirely for weeks. The discovery sends shockwaves through everyone connected to the case. This is not new evidence for court. It changes nothing legally, but it changes everything else. It reframes the crime not as an isolated event, but as part of a continuum. an escalation, a culmination. The question no one wanted to ask now demands attention. Was the Tokyo case the only time he crossed that line? Authorities quietly review unsolved incidents from the same period. No public announcement, no promises. Patterns are compared. Some align, others do not. Nothing definitive emerges. But the possibility alone is enough to reopen old wounds. Families from other cases begin calling, asking, hoping, dreading. The man is confronted with the notebooks. He does not deny them. He shrugs almost apologetically. He calls them thoughts, observations. Harmless, he says. The investigators push back. Words matter. Patterns matter. Silence matters. He listens, then looks away. He does not confess to anything new. He does not need to. The existence of the notebook speaks for him. In the end, the notebooks are archived, sealed, added to a growing collection of materials that tell a story no single verdict can contain. The official narrative remains unchanged. The man remains in prison. The house remains standing. The city continues. But beneath the surface, the case has changed shape. It is no longer just about what happened in 2001. It is about how close it came to happening again. How many silences were layered on top of one another. How easily observation can slide into violation when left unchecked. And for those who know the full story now, the most unsettling realization is this. The crime was not the moment everything went wrong. It was the moment everything stopped. The notebooks refused to stay quiet. Even sealed, even archived, their existence radiates outward, altering conversations, reopening instincts that had learned to sleep. Analysts read them not as diaries but as instruments, measuring devices tuned to routine and opportunity. The handwriting is consistent, careful, almost tender in its attention to detail. Times are recorded to the minute. Weather is noted. The ebb and flow of foot traffic. The moment a light goes out. The moment a door opens and closes. The city reduced to pulses, and the people within it flattened into patterns. It is not hatred that fills the pages. It is interest, and interest, untempered, is a dangerous fuel. Authorities convene quietly. No announcements. No statements that might ignite a panic they cannot control. They frame the question narrowly. Are there unsolved incidents that align with the rhythms described in the notebooks? The answer arrives slowly, unevenly. Some cases fall away immediately, too distant, too different. Others hover. A break-in reported but never charged. A family disturbed at night. Nothing taken. Nothing broken. A missing person whose last known movements intersect a route drawn faintly in pencil. None of it is enough to name a second crime. It is enough to unsettle. The families from 2001 are informed again. Reluctantly. There is no new accusation, no expansion of guilt. Only context. They listen with a practiced stillness, absorbing the implication that what happened to them may have been preceded by watching, rehearsed in silence. One of them asks the question everyone has been avoiding. If he watched others, why us? There is no answer that does not sound cruel. Randomness is not comforting. Selection is worse. In prison, the man becomes more guarded. The notebooks have breached a boundary he thought impermeable. He requests fewer visits. He declines interviews. When psychologists ask about the writing, he minimizes it. A habit, he says, a way of organizing thoughts. When asked why the entries stopped in early 2001, he says he got busy. When asked with what, he says life. The word hangs there, inadequate and hollow. The guards notice a change too. His silence grows thicker, more deliberate. He no longer reads the papers. He no longer asks for transcripts. He sits, listening, as if measuring time rather than passing it. Once, during a routine check, a guard hears him whisper something under his breath. Too soft to make out. The guard does not mention it. In this place, whispers belong to everyone. Outside, the house finally changes. Not dramatically, not with demolition or ceremony. A decision is made to renovate, not erase. The exterior remains. The interior is stripped and rebuilt. Walls replaced. Floors removed. wiring redone. The city frames it as renewal. Those who know better understand it as containment. You cannot remove a place from memory, but you can alter the way it holds sound. When the work is finished, the house looks ordinary again. That ordinariness unsettles people more than emptiness ever did. A new family moves in months later. The announcement is quiet. No names, no interviews. Neighbors watch from behind curtains, half expecting something to happen simply because nothing has. It doesn't. The days pass. Lights turn on and off. Laughter leaks through windows. The city exhales. Slowly. The notebooks, meanwhile, become a focal point for a different kind of inquiry. Academics request access. Criminologists debate classification. Are these artifacts of premeditation or symptoms of compulsion? The answer matters less than the recognition that observation itself can be an act of dominance. Watching without being seen. Knowing without being known. The man's writing is cited in conferences, anonymized, abstracted. He becomes a case study rather than a person. A role he seems to accept with relief. Then a letter arrives. Not to the police. To a journalist who covered the trial with unusual restraint. The envelope contains no return address. Inside is a single page, typed, unadorned. It references the notebooks obliquely, then poses a question that lands like a challenge. If watching is harmless, why stop writing when the watching ends? The journalist reads it twice, heart rate climbing. The phrasing is careful. The timing is precise. Feels like bait. Protocol demands caution. The journalist contacts authorities immediately. The letter is examined. The paper is generic. The ink unremarkable. No fingerprints worth mentioning. But the language mirrors the man's cadence, the same economical turns of phrase, the same emphasis on process over outcome. Investigators debate whether to confront him. In the end, they do not. A response, any response, might be what the letter was designed to provoke. Weeks later, another letter arrives. Shorter this time. It references the renovated house, noting how sound travels differently through new walls. This detail has not been reported anywhere. Access to that information would require proximity, or memory, or imagination sharpened by obsession. The city tightens again. Surveillance increases around the house, discreet but constant. The new family is informed only that extra patrols are routine. They accept it, uneasy but grateful. The man is questioned. He denies everything. He seems genuinely irritated by the suggestion that he would reach out. He insists he has moved on. When pressed about the house's acoustics, he shrugs. Anyone could guess, he says. Renovations change sound. It's obvious. The investigators note the defensiveness. They also note the absence of surprise. The letters stop. No explanation. No closure. Just another silence layered atop the others. Analysts argue about attribution, copycat, hoax, residual fixation. No conclusion satisfies. The uncertainty itself becomes the point. A reminder that not all threats announce themselves, and not all obsessions burn out when exposed. Time passes. The case drifts again, not into oblivion, but into a state of alert dormancy. The notebooks remain sealed. The letters are filed. The house stands. The man serves his sentence. Tokyo continues to refine its illusions of order, polishing surfaces, smoothing edges, absorbing shocks until they feel like history. On an anniversary that no one marks publicly, a former investigator walks past the house at night. He does not know why he chose this route. He tells himself it was convenient. The windows glow softly. A television murmurs. Ordinary life continuing. He pauses, listening. The street is quiet, but not unnaturally so. Just quiet enough to hear his own breathing. He realizes then that the most dangerous silences are not the ones that follow violence. They are the ones that come after acknowledgement, when everyone believes the story has ended and lowers their guard. In prison, the man marks the same date without ceremony. He does not write. He does not speak. He sits and listens, as he always has, to a world that has grown louder around him while insisting it is at peace. Somewhere between walls, between years, between the pages that exist and the ones that never will, the truth remains suspended. Not hidden, not revealed, waiting for the next shift in pressure. And in Tokyo, a city built to move forward, the past does what it has always done best. It lingers. By the time the word resurfaces again, confession, it no longer sounds like a solution, only a disturbance, a stone dropped into water that had learned how to appear calm. It begins not with a press conference or a leak, but with a call placed after midnight to a regional police switchboard, a voice low, steady, unhurried, a voice that does not ask if it is being recorded because it assumes it always is. The caller does not give a name. He gives a date instead. A date from 2001. A date that matches a gap investigators have stared at for decades without knowing what shape it should take. The operator listens, frozen, as the voice describes a room, a smell, a sound that should not have existed at that hour. When the call ends, the line goes dead before a trace can be locked. The silence afterward is louder than the words. The report climbs the chain of command faster than protocol allows. Old names are pulled from archives. Retired detectives are woken in the early hours, their phones buzzing with numbers they thought they would never see again. The details from the call are transcribed, then read aloud, then read again in private. Some of it aligns too well, too precise, measurements that were never public. A mistake made at the scene that was corrected before sunrise and never documented beyond a handwritten note. The city does not know yet, but the machinery has begun to turn, slow and heavy, grinding against years of rust. They play the recording in a sealed room, lights dimmed, blinds drawn. The voice has no accent that can be easily placed. It does not rush. It does not perform. It speaks as if reciting instructions long memorized. There is no remorse in the tone, but there is no bravado either. It feels procedural, as though the act being described was one step in a sequence that mattered more than its consequence. When the voice stops, no one speaks for several seconds. Someone finally exhales, a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. The first question is obvious and useless. Is it him? The man already imprisoned? The man whose notebooks mapped a city down to its breathing patterns? Voice analysis is inconclusive. Time has altered his cadence, his pitch. Age and confinement have reshaped him. The second question cuts deeper. If it is not him, then who has been carrying this knowledge for 24 years without a sound? And why now? They revisit everything. Not just the crime, but the days surrounding it. Weather reports, transit delays, power fluctuations. They notice something that had been dismissed as coincidence before. A brief outage reported 3 blocks away, 15 minutes long, logged as routine maintenance. The caller mentioned darkness where there should have been light. The timeline fits too neatly to ignore. The investigators feel the familiar tightening in the chest, the sensation of a puzzle piece sliding into place while revealing how many pieces are still missing. Rumors begin to leak despite the effort to contain them. A confession, a new voice. Social media hums with speculation, half-truths colliding at speed. The families hear before they are told. They always do. A reporter leaves a voicemail asking for comment. Voice falsely gentle. One mother listens, deletes the message, sits at her kitchen table until dawn. Hope is not a gift anymore. It is a threat. The authorities release a statement that says nothing while implying everything. They confirm they are reviewing new information related to the 2001 case. They urge patience. The word lands badly. Patience is what the families have been sentenced to without trial. Still, the statement cracks the seal. Cameras appear outside buildings that have not been photographed in years. The city pretends it has moved on while leaning forward, straining to hear. The call is analyzed again, this time for what it avoids. The voice never says why, never names the victim directly, never claims responsibility outright. It circles the act, describes the mechanics, the aftermath, the way the city sounded afterward, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. That detail chills the room. It mirrors a phrase found in one of the notebooks, a line that had been dismissed as metaphor. The convergence is not proof. It is something worse. Resonance. They confront the imprisoned man again, armed with the transcript. He listens without interrupting, eyes half-lidded, expression unreadable. When the reading ends, he smiles, just slightly, not in amusement but recognition. He says nothing for a long moment. Then he asks a question of his own. Did the voice mention the clock? The investigators exchange glances. The call referenced a timepiece, yes. A clock that had been stopped during the incident and restarted later, incorrectly. The man nods, as if confirming a suspicion. He says that detail was never in the notebooks. He says it was something you could only know if you were there, or if someone told you. The room tightens. The implication fractures in multiple directions. Either he is lying now or he lied then, or someone else was closer than anyone ever realized. They push him harder. He grows quieter. Eventually, he leans back and says carefully that watching does not always mean acting. Sometimes it means learning who else is watching. The words drop into the space between them, heavy, ambiguous, impossible to file. Another call comes 2 days later. Different line. Same voice. This time it addresses the investigation directly, correcting a minor error that had been reported in the press. Not defensively, casually, as if annoyed by sloppiness. The caller says the truth matters even now, especially now. Then he says something else, something that freezes the blood. He says there was more than one observer that night. The call ends. The city reacts before the authorities can shape the narrative. Multiple observers. The phrase explodes across screens, stripped of context, inflated into myth. Conspiracy theories bloom. Amateur sleuths flood forums with maps and timelines, connecting strangers with red string logic. The noise threatens to drown out the signal, but the investigators cling to the core fact. Someone out there knows. Someone has decided that now is the moment to be heard. They trace phone records, dead ends branching into more dead ends. The calls are placed from different locations, always public, always crowded. Stations, malls, hospitals, places where anonymity is a feature, not a bug. Surveillance footage yields silhouettes, nothing more. A man in a cap, a man in a mask, or not a man at all. The voice remains the only constant. The families are brought in again, this time with the weight of expectation pressing against every word. They are told there may be developments. They are warned not to hope. The warning fails immediately. One father asks if the voice sounded young. Another asks if it sounded afraid. The answers satisfy no one. When the meeting ends, they leave together, a quiet procession bound by a grief that refuses to age. Late one night, an investigator listens to the calls alone, headphones on, lights off. He hears something he missed before, a faint sound beneath the voice, rhythmic, mechanical. He isolates it, amplifies it. Pedestrian signal. The kind used at certain crossings, emitting a specific pattern for the visually impaired. Not all intersections use the same one. The city is mapped again not by routes, but by sound. The radius tightens. They release nothing publicly, but internally the pressure mounts. If the caller is real, if the confession is credible, then every hour without a face feels like failure. If it is a manipulation, then responding gives it power. The balance is impossible. Meanwhile, the imprisoned man watches the coverage on a delayed broadcast, expression serene. He tells a guard that it is interesting how truth becomes louder when it thinks it will finally be heard. On the 15th day after the first call, a package arrives at a precinct office. No return address. Inside, a single object sealed in plastic. Something that should not exist anymore. Something catalogued as lost. The room goes silent as it is unwrapped. The object does not scream guilt. It whispers credibility. For the first time in years, the case stops feeling cold. Feels volatile. Outside, Tokyo moves, unaware of how close the ground beneath it is to shifting again. Trains arrive on time. Screens flash advertisements. Life insists on continuity. But beneath that insistence, something is awake. something that has been waiting for the right moment to step back into the light. The confession has not answered the questions. It has multiplied them. And as the city leans in, listening for the next sound, one truth becomes unavoidable. Whatever happened in 2001 did not end that night. It only learned how to wait. The object changes everything without explaining anything. It sits on the metal table under fluorescent light, small enough to be overlooked in any other context, ordinary in a way that feels deliberate. Evidence technicians handle it with a care usually reserved for remains. Gloves, photographs, measurements taken twice. It matches a description from 2001 that never made it into the public record because the item was believed destroyed in the confusion of the scene. Believed gone. Believed irrelevant. Now it has returned, intact, patient, carrying the quiet authority of something that has waited its turn. The chain of custody becomes a battlefield. Who touched it? When? Where it could have been hidden? The answers sprawl backward through time, forcing investigators to confront an uncomfortable possibility. If this object survived, then the story they told themselves about that night was incomplete from the start. Not wrong, incomplete. The difference matters more than anyone wants to admit. The voice calls again before dawn, as if responding to the object's arrival, as if proximity sharpens confidence. This time the tone is different, not calmer, sharper. The caller says he knows they have it now. He says it was never meant to stay hidden forever. Only until someone remembered how to look. He does not threaten. He does not demand. He simply states that the city was never dealing with a single narrative, only a convenient one. Investigators attempt engagement, breaking from previous strategy. They ask a question, careful, open-ended. The voice pauses, long enough for breath to become audible. Then it answers with something that feels like a correction rather than a response. He says the mistake was assuming proximity equals guilt. Watching, he says, creates echoes. Some people hear them. Some people follow them. Some people confuse them for their own thoughts. The call ends without ceremony. The line clicks. No signal. No trace. The room feels smaller afterward, as if the walls have leaned in to listen too. Attention turns inward. Old reports are reread not for what they say, but for what they avoid. Names that appear once and never again. Statements marked non-essential. A neighbor who heard something but couldn't place it and was thanked and dismissed. A transit worker whose shift overlapped the timeline but whose testimony was deemed too vague. Each detail, harmless alone, begins to cluster. Patterns emerge that were invisible when the case was framed around a single perpetrator. The imprisoned man becomes a variable again, not as the center but as a node. His notebooks are reviewed with fresh eyes, not as maps of intent, but as records of attention. There are gaps now that feel intentional. Nights where nothing is written despite known routines. Days where the handwriting tightens, compresses, as if reacting to something unseen. Analysts debate whether these are signs of restraint or interference. The argument grows heated. No one wants to be the one to say it aloud, but the idea takes shape anyway. What if he wasn't alone in watching? A retired detective, long silent, requests a meeting. He brings nothing tangible, only a memory he dismissed years ago as paranoia. He recalls feeling observed while conducting door-to-door interviews. Not followed. Observed. The distinction mattered to him then, though he couldn't explain why. He mentions a man who appeared twice on different days, always at a distance, always just outside the frame of relevance. The description is vague. The feeling is not. The room listens differently when he speaks. The media pressure becomes relentless. Every update spawns speculation. Experts argue on panels, voices overlapping, certainty manufactured in real time. The families retreat again, caught between hope and exploitation. One sister stops watching entirely. She says the noise feels like theft. Another attends every briefing, notebook in hand, refusing to let the narrative move without her presence. The object is tested. Results arrive slowly, deliberately, partial, degraded, enough to suggest authenticity, not enough to close anything. The uncertainty sharpens public appetite rather than dulling it. People want an ending. The case refuses to provide one. Another package arrives, this time intercepted before it reaches a precinct. Inside, copies, photographs, a layout of a room that should only exist in memory. The angles are wrong in a way that proves familiarity. This is not reconstruction. This is recall. Tucked among the images is a note, handwritten, different script than the notebooks, but similar in discipline. It says only this: the truth is not singular. It fractures under pressure. Authorities face a decision they have avoided for decades: whether to expand the scope officially, whether to admit the possibility of multiple actors, multiple layers of observation. Doing so risks destabilizing not just the case but trust itself. The idea that the city was watched by more than one unseen presence is harder to swallow than any single monster. Monsters can be named. Networks of silence cannot. They bring the imprisoned man in again. This time they do not accuse. They ask him to listen. They play the calls. They show him the photographs. They place the object on the table between them. He studies it with something like reverence. When he speaks, his voice is softer than before. He says he always believed attention moved in currents, that if you stared long enough at the dark, you would eventually notice other eyes adjusting beside yours. He says some people mistake that for companionship. They ask him if he knows the voice. He does not answer directly. He says voices change depending on who is listening. He says prisons are loud with echoes of people who were never caught, people who learned early that the best way to survive is to let someone else stand closer to the light. The investigators press him. He smiles, faintly, and says he never claimed to be the only one who understood the city. The line between confession and manipulation blurs further when a third voice enters the story. A letter surfaces, unsigned, claiming the calls are a performance, an opportunistic echo feeding on reopened wounds. It offers alternative explanations for the object, for the photographs, each plausible enough to muddy the water. Experts split instantly. Some call it misdirection. Others call it mercy. The families read it and feel nothing but exhaustion. Late one evening, a junior analyst notices something small, almost invisible. A discrepancy in the timing of the calls, not in when they were placed, but in how long the line stayed open after the voice stopped speaking. Seconds. Always the same number. She cross-references it with network data. A pattern emerges, not geographic, but infrastructural. The calls are routed through systems scheduled for maintenance at specific intervals. Someone